the North American Division, 2017 risk management initiatives. Where did this come from? Um, Last year, in the 2017 to 2018 excess liability renewal, the church saw some serious increases due to our loss experience. Our loss experience as a division has been um, a rough one over the last few years. Not a very large number of claims, but certainly some high dollar claims have been paid due to some unfortunate incidents, uh, claims that took people's lives or caused them permanent injury. So the risk management committee at the division asked Adventist Risk Management to please provide a plan, um, a proposal of what can we do to really help people uh, stay safe in our ministries. So whether that's a church outing or a school activity, pathfinders at our camps, what can we do to elevate our ability to keep people safe while they participate in our ministries? The primary goal has to be caring for people and keeping people safe. So um, the result of that is also positive for our organizations, and that is preserving the resources that are available to our organizations. So we control the cost of insurance through effective risk management. Um, so that those are the sort of the background, the inspiration behind what became the 2017 risk management initiatives. So Adventist Risk Management, the team here went back and we did create a proposal that we brought to the NAD Risk Management Committee, and that is the 2017 risk management initiatives. So we presented this there at the Risk Management Committee, followed it up with presentations at the union meetings taking place in the fall of 2016. And it has been a major theme of the presentations that the risk management staff have been given whenever we do presentations, whether that's for pathfinders, pastors, safety officers, clerks and treasurers, whomever it may be. We've really focused in on these key areas. Um, so we're going to talk through what these initiatives are and what they mean. And I think it's important to also remember that these are going to be ideas that we continue to pursue year over year. Um, we will refine the initiatives for 2018, 19, and beyond. This is not a one-year project. This is something that we started in 2017, and we look forward to building on in the future. We have a lot of opportunity, a lot of room for growth as a church in effective risk management. So this is an exciting journey, and I'm glad that you have an interest in this and are participating with us. So let's talk about what the initiatives are and how we can implement these more effectively going forward. So make sure my clicker's working here. All right. So here's just a broad overview. There are 5 initiatives. We tried to keep these simple and practical. We're going to unpack each one of these in more detail. Um, there's certainly more ideas that could have been part of our initiatives, but it seemed as though we wanted to keep this under control as far as let's just do a few things well to get started. And so these were the items that came to the top of our priority list. These are focused on caring for people's safety and across many of our ministries. It also sets us up for success in the future, and I hope you see that as a real solution as we go through the detail of each one of these. But in general, here we have risk management committees, and this is primarily at the organizational level. So we're talking at the conference level. Although this idea can apply at any level of the church organization. But primarily we're looking to implement this at the conference level through this particular initiative. We'll unpack that. You may have heard of the need to remove 15 passenger vans. This is certainly an idea that has been talked about for years, and this gets into that just a bit more detail. Conducting risk assessments, emergency planning, and camp safety. These are the 5 areas that we've chosen to focus on in the 2017 NAD risk management initiatives. So the theory behind this is risk management takes place best when our leadership are invested in it. Um, I I think of my own local church. There are a number of us from Adventist Risk Management that attend that church, and for years it was not the priority of the leadership in that church to do effective risk management, having a safety officer conducting inspections. So while there are a number of people in the membership who did have this as a priority, there was not the leadership that allowed that to actually um, take place with any effectiveness. Somebody could certainly go walk around and do um, inspections and whatnot, but there was nothing going to happen with that information. There was no support from leadership. So what I watched, though, is a new leader came on board, a new pastor came into our church who did recognize the value of life safety and risk management as a practical part of ministry in his church. And so he took a very different approach. He empowered the safety officer. He endorsed the process, and I'll probably talk a bit more about my own personal experience with that at my church. But we did see very effective results. I was really excited to see the right things taking place and benefiting our church. So um, what we've learned, though, is that without that key leader, oftentimes we do really miss out on um, any sort of results from risk management goals and practices or implementing any sort of initiative. Um, so these initiatives are focused particularly on getting the leadership participation involved. And that includes more than just Treasury staff. That includes appealing to presidents, executive secretaries at our conferences. But you could take this idea and also apply it to a local church. Is the pastor and the elder on board with risk management in their church? We tried to make the goals very practical, and I think you'll see that as we go through them. Um, Goals that are theoretical are very hard to measure, and they're very hard to achieve, and they're very subjective. So we tried to make them practical because when we're practical, there will actually be a difference, is what we believe. And throughout, we also look to implement accountability. How is this going to be measured? How is this going to be followed up? Who is going to own this part of the process? So you'll see that as we go through. And we wrote the initiatives very much along the lines of, why is this a problem? What is it that we're going to do? And who's going to do it? So following up again with that explanation of what we're trying to achieve, how we're going to achieve it, and who's going to be responsible and who's going to be held accountable to achieve that. So that's built into this model as well. So here are the 5 initiatives again: risk management committees, removing 15 passenger vans, compliance with inspections, emergency planning, and camp safety. I'm sure you can think of more ideas that certainly are worthy of being part of the initiatives in the future, and certainly we will be exploring more concepts as we go along. But I think these are very practical and well worth our attention as we get started. So let's dive into them in more detail. We're going to start at the top with risk management committees. And here's the general idea. We're looking for leadership to engage in risk management across the organization. So primarily, we're looking to have the officers as part of the risk management committee at the conference level. And we would expect that they would want to involve key directors as well. And those that we certainly recommend would be our youth directors, education directors, and I'm sure you may even have others that come immediately to your mind at your conference. Certainly the camp people should be part of this process. bringing all of the different areas to the table is meant to give people the responsibility and the accountability that risk management is not just one person's job. This isn't just about um, a delegation process. Certainly, there will usually need to be somebody who takes the initiative to kind of be that point of the spear for risk management, but it is, at the end of the day, something that everyone needs to be invested in. It needs to be a cultural attitude of risk management, not just an assignment for one individual. So we ask that the committees be set up in that way, with key leaders and certainly the officer team. Because caring for people is something that needs to start at the top, and they need to be able to set the tone that this is a priority for this organization. We also ask that the Adventist Risk Management Account Executive be the secretary of the committee. So what this does is it allows the account executive to bring items to the agenda, as well as resources. What it also allows us to do is have the account executive bring information and reporting back to Adventist Risk Management as we track the implementation, the rollout of this across the division. So it becomes a two-way street of communication. Don't worry, we're not underwriting based on any of this stuff. That is still done in the normal ways, but this becomes very valuable information as we determine as a division, are we actually achieving something through this process? So a really, really important accountability. You're going to hear me say that again and again and again, but an accountability process so that we can report back to each other and ourselves and say, Adventist Risk Management delivered this, or we did fail to deliver this, or this conference has implemented this or not implemented this. As we go along. So accountability is really important to the process. We also included a timeline of measurable goals for the committee to actually achieve. So we ask that each conference meet as this committee at least twice in 2017. 2 times a year seems like a good number. Some conferences, of course, are just learning about this and getting on board. You need to do what's most practical and what will actually achieve results. So if you haven't yet done a committee at the conference level, what I would encourage is set a date in the near future, if at all possible, when your leadership can get together with our account executive and get started. If you've already started, fantastic. We appreciate that. And we'll look forward to perhaps your second committee meeting before the end of the year. And then also you can get into a cycle where you're planning for next year as well to meet. Where possible, the ARM account executive will actually travel to the committee meeting. Perhaps other meetings can be taking place to really make that trip a very full trip with achieving a lot. But if not, also another option that we really encourage here and we use quite a bit is we do a lot of video conferencing. Sort of similar to what we're doing here today in a webinar, we're able to meet with people via video. And a number of our team have been doing that very successfully for these committees as well. And we also provided our last item there, standing 2017 agenda items to address the initiatives. So we actually gave the conferences agenda items so that they would have a place to start of what do we do as a committee, what do we review? And they were based entirely on the initiatives that we have here. So let's get into the next initiative. But do you see how this first initiative really sets us up for success in order to achieve the upcoming initiatives? So it's all about taking that leadership stance, organizing ourselves, and then putting a plan in place to actually roll out these concepts as we go forward. So let's get into the first one, which is something that I think everyone is very familiar with, and that is the removal of 15 passenger vans. This is something we've been talking about for years. the church has certainly taken a position on it for quite a number of years. Um, I don't think I need to talk to the danger of 15 passenger vans today. We're actually doing another webinar later today for safety officers across the division on 15 passenger vans, talking about the danger of them, why the church has taken a stance of needing to remove them, that we don't want to use them at all. But I think this group is probably well aware of those issues. If you're not, certainly join us for the other webinar later today. I think that's at 2 o'clock Eastern time. Or just Google 15 passenger vans, and I think fairly high on the list is going to be a number of articles related to significant losses that have taken place with people in crashes involving 15 passenger vans. So it is a very real risk. So a few of the tools, we try to be resource oriented in this whole process. And one of the conferences actually took this initiative before we had rolled this out, so it was really encouraging to see. But they actually wrote a letter as the employer of the pastors and teachers and principals in that conference, and they wrote a letter to their employees saying that essentially 15 passenger vans would not be used or tolerated to be used at all within that conference, and it would become a matter of employment if principals and pastors were aware of this and allowed its use in their churches and schools. Taking a much more firm stance as an employer to say, no, we will not do this in this organization, and you as our employee do need to represent that we have chosen as an organization not to do this. So we took that model, that letter, and made it a bit more generic and shared it out with all of the employers, or all of the conferences anyway, here in North America, to take that stance with their employees. If you need a copy of that, we can certainly provide all of these resources to you. Certainly reach out to myself or your account executive for that information. ARM will provide a template, a model letter, to be sent no later than March 31st, 2017. And we were able to do that earlier than that, as it turns out. Adventist Risk Management, ARM, will provide quarterly resources via solutions, and we've been able to keep on track with that. We have a team here that works on solutions, and they keep it a priority that an article talking about 15 passenger vans will remain a topic in our newsletter that we provide on risk management. So if you're not subscribed to our solutions newsletter, I really encourage you to do that and share that with all of the safety officers, pastors, principals in your organization, so that they can also benefit from risk management advice. We cover a large number of topics, but we try to keep them very focused on the practical risks that we know our churches and schools are facing across the division. So encourage you to subscribe. It's free, and we send an article about once a week on risk management topics for you specifically. ARM will, by no later than March 31st, 2017, provide a checklist which conferences can use as best practices when bringing a new church into a conference. This was an important resource and related to 15 passenger vans, very much related to a specific loss that took place within our division, where a church was onboarded into a conference. They went so far as to have a 15 passenger van that they didn't disclose to the conference. They kept it at one of the church members' homes and kept it in the former organization's name. So people can be a little bit tricky on this, and we continue to see that kind of thing taking place. But very important for us to have a clear, documented way of onboarding a church, a group, into a conference that really asks the right questions and does the due diligence to alert people to um, the practices and policies of the organization that they're joining. Um, so we were able to provide that, and it asks a number of simple questions. It's not a big, complicated process, but we think it's a valuable resource for any conference that's going through that process, because it is particularly an area that you don't want to miss in an onboarding of an organization. So it asks questions about specifically 15 passenger vans and a number of other issues that you really need to have covered as you go through that process. We had a great deal of support from the North American division as relates to this initiative of removing 15 passenger vans. And they went so far as to update the working policy language to address this specifically. Now, there's been language up till now that's strongly discouraged, and I think I have the exact language here. So this kind of shows the editing process on the policy language, but it used to say advised against the purchase, lease, or use of 15 passenger vans. And then it gets into, but if you still have them, here's what you do, and that kind of approach. So the new policy language is much more clear, very direct. And it is, in the interest of safety, denominational organizations shall not purchase, lease, rent, or use 15 passenger vans. And that's just so much more clear. I think of particular interest is for us at this particular date, right, is the idea of shall not lease, rent, or use. I think most of our organizations have kind of adopted the concept that we shouldn't be buying any more of them. We certainly get a lot of questions that are related to, is this one or not? And that is not the easiest question to answer, because there are so many vans from different manufacturers, and they do you do have scenarios where a 12 passenger could also be configured as a 15. I mean, it can get a little bit complicated, but we're happy to walk you through that. We're certainly happy to do the research to advise you as you go through that process. But most of our church is starting to get its head around the idea that, okay, I shouldn't be buying, and if it kind of looks like and acts like and smells like and walks like a 15 passenger van, I probably need to go in a different direction. But where we're still struggling is the concept of, yeah, but nobody knows if I just lease it and rent it for my little activity over here. Nobody saw that, or nobody's holding me accountable for the fact that I shouldn't have done that. So that's an area that needs a lot of follow through and tightening up. And that means when we show up at camporees, at the union level, at conference events, and it's a youth event, and there's 15 passenger vans in a row sitting there, where did these guys come from? We need to take a clear message back and say, no, this is exactly what we're saying we should not do, we will not do. So I encourage you to really look for those holes in the process, because that's an opportunity for us to tighten up quite a bit. The other area that is of deep concern to me is there are a few churches that have taken the stance of, okay, we're going to get rid of our 15 passenger van, we're going to sell it to Brother Jones, and he's going to keep it and let us use it when we need it. So technically the conference doesn't know about it, and Adventist Risk Management doesn't know about it. But that's not a solution either, because we can still have issues where if this is a church activity and we're using a 15 passenger van, the church will still be held responsible in the event of a loss. Unfortunately, the poor fellow who now technically owns the van will also be very much held responsible for the loss. And their insurance will probably not be adequate, and certainly won't be adequate to the type of organization that they're representing, right? My own personal auto insurance is not going to be the kind of auto insurance that represents an organization like a conference. The assets and commercial nature of a large organization are different than from an individual. So the poor individual who's taken on this responsibility may not fully appreciate the risk that they've taken onto themselves, and this may in fact impact them on a personal level um, in the event of a loss. So I don't think it's fair to do that to individuals in our church. I don't think that's right. And I think if people understood the issues at stake, they wouldn't take that approach. But it's an education process, and we need to work on that together. I think an important piece also here is that policy now actually makes suggestions about alternatives to 15 passenger vans. We should use perhaps smaller, more, I wanted to use the term domestic, but vehicles that most people are familiar and experienced using, like minivans, SUVs. I realize that you cannot put as many people into each of those vehicles, but that's a real positive because in the event of a loss, there are fewer people involved. Drivers are going to be more familiar with handling those vehicles, and they don't have as significant risks as a 15-passenger van. They also recommend mini school buses, so moving into a full bus-sized vehicle, as well as, and that includes the 15-passenger bus. Notice it's not a van, it is a bus with dual rear wheels as a positive solution. You may be, what does that look like if you travel through airports? You're often going to be riding on one of those types of shuttles to and from the car rental facility. That's what you should be thinking of, is that kind of a vehicle. Let's move on to the next initiative. This is initiative 1, 2, 3. We're on to number 3. Again, we could talk about 15-passenger vans for a very long time, and I think I've probably already talked too long on that one. So we're going to keep things moving along. Compliance with inspections. Inspections happen at a number of levels. Adventist Risk Management has loss control personnel that we send out. Our focus primarily is on the camps, academies, those kinds of campuses as far as the work that we do personally in inspecting our church's facilities, our insured's facilities. So we will also bring in specialists for university campuses of the church. When it comes to local churches and schools of the smaller nature, we partner with other organizations who can achieve this much more effectively because there's so many different locations, right? So we work with partners like Verisk and ISO who are able to go in and conduct those inspections and appraisals. So that's a number of levels. Another really important level, perhaps the most important level, is the concept of a self-inspection. So local churches can actually conduct a self-inspection. We have resources for that. But what happens with this? What happens to the inspections that are done? When Adventist Risk Management goes out, or whether it's the local safety officer doing the inspection, where does that information go? What happens with that? Are there effective recommendations? Do those need to be followed up on? And who's accountable to follow up with that information? Really important piece of actually achieving something, because just doing an inspection, it really doesn't make anyone safer unless we've done something because of that information. So Adventist Risk Management is implementing a system to track and follow up on recommendations that we do for the surveys, inspections that we go out and do ourselves. And that is in process. We're working through the implementation of that system. That will be a really interesting cultural shift as we do follow up with the key contact people when we do make recommendations. They will hear from us again and again until we can know that actual action has taken place to remedy whatever it is that we've recommended needs to be fixed. This needs to take place at local churches and schools as well. So when you do an inspection at a local church, we really do need that inspection to be brought as a report to either the board or a subcommittee of the board for action to take place. So again, leadership needs to actually be invested in it enough to take it seriously, to budget for it, to give it a voice on the board. Otherwise, very little action can take place because the wrong people are listening and no money will be allocated and no change will be made. So very, very important for that uh, to become part of our accountability process. We're asking that the Conference Risk Management Committee, initiative number 1, will review outstanding recommendations. So if we go out, Adventist Risk Management Loss Control personnel go out and we inspect a camp and we have maybe 5 recommendations, those recommendations really do need to be reviewed by the leadership of the organization. And there needs to be that follow through of what happened with that information. Um, Local entities should conduct at least one premises inspection and report that to the local church or school board. Very important. And that's one per year. I think it's better to probably do it at least annually, if not or biannually, if not quarterly. But you have to set the bar low for our start here. So I'm looking for at least one per year for each organization. So if you haven't scheduled one at your local church, you may want to go ask them, hey, have we done ours yet? So how are we going to follow up on that? Who's going to know? And I think it's very important for certainly the board to be looking for, hey, have we done our inspection here yet? But at the conference level, I think it's very important to be measuring what is taking place across the conference at all of our locations. So the resource and the tool for that is for the conference financial audit, which is a every 2-year process typically, to do a little bit of a risk management audit as part of that. And so we've prepared a resource and shared that out with conferences. Again, any of the resources I talk about, please do connect with your account executive if you're looking for your copy. But it asks several questions and provides a spreadsheet for tracking, you know, um, did we ask these questions at this church and what were the answers? And they're simple questions like, did you do your inspection this year and on what date? Did you bring the recommendations to the board? Do you have a 15-passenger van? That one keeps popping up again and again. But it allows for that audit to take place where we're actually checking to see, are people implementing this at the local level? Very important. Otherwise, this stays in the theoretical, and we want to get it into the practical. So that starts to tie the pieces together. I hope that makes sense to you. All right, let's move into the next area. This is just examples of some of the resources we have, the self-inspections forms. We have the church one, the school self-inspection form, and a camp one. And they are fillable. They're PDF documents. They are fillable, so you could do them on a tablet if you wanted, just so you could walk around. Fairly easy to use. And they're divided a little bit into the normal types of places and issues that camps and churches and schools have. So free on our website. Please make use of them. This is a tool for you to equip your people. So I think they're very valuable. You may find areas that okay, I don't have that. Well then, not applicable. Don't need to fill that out. Typically, if you're answering no to a question, this is kind of the theory behind how our forms are created. If you're answering no to a question, then something needs to happen. Something needs to be followed up on there. So if you're answering yes, that's typically a positive thing. We have achieved this, or we have done that. That resource is in place. It's going to ask you questions like, are your fire extinguishers serviced annually and are they up to date? Yes, they are. Great. Okay. But if no, they're not, then you need to follow up on that. So those are some of the resources we have available for that. Initiative number 4 is emergency planning. So this is the second year, 2017 is the second year that we've had Safety Sabbath, and that took place on March 25. It's, I believe, the 4th Sabbath in March on the NAD calendar. So again, an opportunity for highlighting risk management as part of our ministries. a very practical way to do this is to actually do a drill. So we've promoted several different types of drills over last year and this year that included active shooter drills and fire. Um, so these are the types of drills you can do as an actual activity in your church. Our team has provided a number of resources, promotional resources, a video, um, a lot of material to make it very interesting and practical to everyone, from the kids in the Sabbath school divisions all the way to actually conducting these activities in the either the service or between services. A lot of resources there. So some of the implementation on this was we asked leadership to communicate support about this. I don't think, if I'm perfectly honest, I don't think we had as much support and movement on that this year, 2017, as it very much needed from a leadership standpoint. Very important for leaders to learn about the idea that risk management is not something that is just delegated for some other part of the organization to handle, that it is something for everyone, and that leaders do need to take that role as far as communicating it out and saying, no, folks, this is going to be a priority for us. Because when people see that, oh, okay, we can get on board with this and support it. Very difficult for somebody to implement this type of an idea sort of from a lower level of the organization. So we did ask for leadership to communicate their support. ARM has done a lot of promotion on this, as well as providing resources. People could go sign up for resources. They'd be mailed directly to them, emailed to them. And we're looking at the results of that now. Personally, I think there's a lot of room for growth. Our church as a whole has not yet bought into the idea that risk management is part of ministry. And so I would expect these early days, these early years, for it to be slow growth. But I think if we all push together, we can get a much better result on that. There's certainly churches that did do this, and schools, and there are some wonderful stories of people who had very positive experiences, realizing that this is easy to do, much easier than you'd expect. The resources are there. People actually enjoy it quite a bit more than you'd expect. Having been through the drills at my local church and participating a bit in the safety committee process and all of that, um, there's a real positive feeling of actually planning ahead, preparing your people, and knowing that you're doing the right thing for your organization, for your flock. Um, it's a real positive attitude and atmosphere, and people have a lot of fun with it. Um, I can think of a lot of illustrations a pastor could use to really tie the concept of risk management into the ministry and message of the congregation. Um, I look at the life of Christ and see how he cared for people's real needs, not looking for something in return. He just really cared for them. So he did. He reached out and met their needs. He spent time with them. I think that's a powerful example, and there's a lot of great illustrations. But I'm not going to preach today because we're a little bit over time already. So emergency planning, still a lot of resources on our website on that. A really important initiative for us to pursue as a church because emergencies do happen. Medical emergencies, disasters, and now we have very unpleasant events that can take place, like active shooter situations and whatnot. So um, I think we have much room for growth, and we have the tools and resources to do it. So it's about taking that initiative and pursuing it. Finally, the final initiative was very focused on our camps. Our church has amazing camps across this nation, Canada and the United States. Uh, these are some of the most powerful ministries reaching children for Jesus. A lot of people are making their commitments and are really establishing their connection with Christ at these facilities, at our camps. So how do we help make sure that our camps are safe places? Because they are also involved in some of the more risky activities. It's a great number of children in some of the more dangerous activities that we could possibly dream up, because that's what kids like to do apparently. How do we make sure that these are run professionally and with the utmost security and safety for these young people that we care so much about? One of the very easiest ways that we can go about this is by adopting basic standards. And so we looked for a great standard setting organization that allows us to say, okay, are we at least meeting this level of professionalism and safety and uh, guidance for our camps? And the obvious choice here in the United States is the American Camping Association. And in Canada, we have similar organizations province by province. It's not a nationwide program, but it's province by province. So what we've asked our camps to do, and many have already done this, there were quite a number that had already adopted the ACA accreditation, but we're asking all of our camps to pursue accreditation. Get in on that. NAD Camp Ministries actually secured a 15% discount by doing the accreditation process as a group buy. So powerful support from that group. Adventist Risk Management is also offering 20% up to $500 a rebate on the renewal fee. Renewal fees are not huge, and they are based very much on the size and nature of each individual camp. But we're happy to contribute in that way, and that is a meaningful amount for the type of fee that is typically assessed for that process. We have a lot of room to grow as far as getting more and more of our camps on board with ACA accreditation. It is such an opportunity. For those camps that are already on board, the testimonials are powerful. They wouldn't dream of not having ACA accreditation. There's the opportunity for camps that have ACA accreditation to really actually attract more visitors to their camp, because parents can look at that and say, of all the camps I could send my kids to, this ACA accreditation shows me that this one is a safer place. It is a standard of care that at least I know that they've followed that. So that's a real positive reason to pursue this. So that's an important piece of the whole puzzle. I would encourage you to pursue ACA accreditation at your camps. Really, really important. And that really brings us to the end of the initiatives that we have. This is all 5 of them. I know we could unpack, and I could certainly talk for a long time on each of these and all of the different questions and issues that are related to them. But if you do have any questions, certainly I'm willing to take them. I do have a question here that I'm willing to answer, and we're going to take maybe 2 or 3, and then if we're going to close it down. If you do have others that your question didn't get answered, please feel free to email your account executive or call, or you can certainly talk to me as well. But let me catch this first question that we do have. Do you have testimonials on how other churches have conducted fire drills, active shooter drills, etc.? And do they address getting around the political barriers and the fear of offending church members in trying to implement these drills? It may provide insight on how other churches handle their drills. That's a great question, and I think I know who's asking that. I'm glad you're on the webinar today. Yes, we do have some testimonials. I don't have those handy here, but it's certainly something that I've asked for a report on. We're going to be looking into in more detail. What are the experiences? But for those people that I've spoken to personally who've gone through the process, the testimony tends to be extremely positive. I talked to people who attended an amazing active shooter drill at one of our academies, and they found it to be a powerful, wonderful experience. Um, because you don't know how you're going to react in that kind of a situation until you've gone through it, until you've kind of seen and felt and smelt it. So the anecdotal testimonials that I have, and I have quite a number because people typically tell me about their experiences when I'm speaking at events, has been very, very positive. Um, I think there's much we need to learn about how to do them best. I've I remember I was meeting with a group and I had an individual in the crowd who was, they must be surprise drills. It's no use doing a drill unless it's a surprise drill. Well, I really take a different approach of, I don't want to surprise a group of people who are completely unprepared to do the right thing. I would rather train my church to do the right thing by communicating effectively to them. And once we have achieved a general understanding of how to do these drills effectively, then we will move into the, okay, I'm not going to announce it every single time. I'm not going to tell you it's coming once you're ready for that approach. Um, let me get to this particular part of the question, and that is, can we address getting around the political barrier and the fear of offending church members in trying to implement these drills? You know, that's the leadership part of the question. Can leadership speak to the need to do those things that will be of practical benefit to our churches, to our schools? And that's why it's so important for leadership to take that stance. Um, it's something we need to do as an organization to really move the needle for particularly our pastors, to appreciate some of the business and practical concerns that they're not necessarily taught as effectively as we might hope in our school process for the pastoral track. Um, I'll be honest though, I know a great many pastors who very much have an appreciation for this and are very, very supportive. Um, we working together, being consistent in message, and raising this as a priority in our organizations will bring those who are resistant along over time. It just takes implementing and leadership showing that this is a priority. Um, when a president says this is something we will do and it matters and I'm going to do it too, typically you do start to see a real shift among the pastoral staff to say, oh, okay, no, all right, the head pastor in charge is taking this approach. It's something I'm going to take seriously. Very important. Um, we could talk about that for probably quite some time. Here's the next question, and we're going to close on this because I'm gravely over time. Um, oh, glad you're on the call too. When can we expect to receive the report of which entities within our conference registered to participate on Safety Sabbath? I've asked for that report. I'm going to meet with that group today to see where that report is so that we can share that out. So as far as when are we going to know that, I'm going to know hopefully today, but we'll set maybe a 2-week window in case there is something that I'm not aware of as far as getting you that information. But let's put it at a 2-week window. And one last one, I've been asked which items on the self-inspection reports are a must to address and implement versus a nice to have. So which would be, have to do, mandatory, as opposed to nice to have. That's going to be a judgment call and that's why it's so important to have qualified people on that committee if at all possible. So if you have somebody who has emergency responder experience, fantastic. If you have somebody who is, a general contractor and has that very practical perspective, fantastic. Not everybody has those resources. You're going to have to work with what you have, but a real opportunity if you do have people in your congregation that they can help make that judgment call. Certainly, I would look at anything that might impact an inspection from the fire marshal as an extremely high priority, because that should be something that's addressed very, very, very much right away. But that becomes the judgment call of, is this something that puts me in a real legal problem, or is this something that is a pretty good idea that we're going to have to push out over time? There are going to be some judgment calls that do need to be made there. Certainly, if you have something come up that's a question, we're happy to make that, to work with you on that, to give you what information we have and guidance that we can. Folks, I really appreciate the fact that we were able to get together. I know that we probably have a lot more questions. Please share those questions with your account executives. Your account executive will be reaching out to you over the next few months to find out how are we doing on implementation. If you haven't done anything, that's fine. Well, it's not great, but we're going to start there and we're going to move forward. How can we get where we want to go with this? And that is having a renewed emphasis on risk management across our organizations through all ministries, and really developing that culture that prioritizes risk management as part of ministry, because it's really about caring for people's well-being. Thank you so much for what each of you do. It's a pleasure to work with each of you, and my team certainly enjoys that as well. And thanks for being on the webinar. We'll catch you next time.